Welcome into the Jazz Notes podcast. Ben Anderson, David James, recording this on January 8th. The Utah Jazz are in the midst of a 5-game losing streak. It's all coming together. David James.
AJ DeBonsa. AJ DeBonsa.
I made a joke that when we talked to Austin Ainge about the team and him saying we're not going to tank, quote-unquote, this year, that was in 2025. And since the calendar has switched over, the Jazz have not won. Now they actually lost December 30th as well. But 5 games in a row to start the year is probably what the team needs to do if they want to hold on to this draft pick.
This losing streak has moved them dramatically in the standings. They'd been battling kind of the 8th, 9th, 10th worst record in the NBA, and now it looks like they're in a pretty tight race for the 5th or 6th worst record in the NBA, which would obviously dramatically change the prospects of A, keeping the pick, and B, moving up.
Looking at the tank odds really quickly, once again, the lottery odds. If the Jazz are, in fact, tanking, if they have the 6th worst record, which is where they are right now, they would have a 96% chance of holding on to their pick. Dallas moved up to number 1 with a 1.8 chance. Again, it's possible you could lose it at 96%. If you drop down to 7th, however, that climbs up to losing the pick about 86% of the time. So that's a big jump. That's 10 percentage points more. There's a reason to hold on to the pick if you're going to, and where you want to be really is in that 5-6 spot. If you were to get all the way down to the 5th worst record in the NBA, you would have a 99.4% chance of holding on to the pick.
I follow you on social media so I can get a steady dose of your brilliance even when I'm not in your presence. And I lean more towards what you said after the Wizards trade, that Trae Young raises their floor. Doesn't do much for their ceiling.
No.
I don't think you can win with Trae Young. I'm surprised the Wizards wanted him. He had his reasons for wanting to go to Washington. Atlanta was better with him off the floor. And also, he makes a lot of money for a long time.
He does, yeah.
So I get Atlanta's motivation. I get his motivation. For the life of me, I don't know what the Wizards' motivation is. Is their fan base going to feel better if they win 30 games instead of 15? I think he will help you beat bad teams. I don't think he can make you that much better, but the Jazz don't need them to be that much better. I think he can make enough improvement. Now, the one thing is he misses games.
He may not play the rest of the year.
And if he doesn't play, then he's not going to make it better.
Yeah.
So there's that. And PK went more towards he just has no impact on winning.
I think he does turn a 17-win team into a 25-win team.
See, and if he moves 17 to 25 or 21 to 29 or whatever, that's what the Jazz need done.
That is only if he plays. Again, he may not play. He's out right now. That may have been because the Hawks really didn't want to play him very much because he has been a wrench in the gears of what they are trying to do and how they move forward. We will see. He may go out there and want to twist his arm into playing.
I don't believe in small guards.
No, period.
Yeah. He is a smaller guard. Donovan Mitchell is a smaller guard. Hate to say it.
No, it's
but the Jazz are working with a smaller guard.
It's absolutely
Keontae.
accurate.
And small in the NBA is anybody under 6'6".
Yeah.
The NBA is a 6'6" and over league. If you are under 6'6" and you are playing, A, you're remarkable. B, if you're playing well and doing what Keontae is doing or what Donovan has done in his big years, I'm blown away.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make me think, when it gets right down to it with the best 4 teams, best 2 teams, best team, I just don't think they're driven by guys under 6'6", and there's an exception to every rule, and his name is Steph Curry.
Sure. He's also the greatest shooter of all time and is just such an anomaly compared to what we've ever seen of anyone before. And he's not 6'1". Steph is 6'4" and does all those things. Shea is 6'6". Really helps.
Shea hits the 6'6" line.
Yep, he's right there. Keontae is 6'2", 6'3", right in that range. I'll be curious, Darren Peterson, who's one of the prize draft picks, he's listed at 6'6". There's a reason they list him at 6'6", because of what David James just laid out.
But that doesn't mean you believe he's 6'6".
I don't believe it.
If he goes to the combine and turns out to be 6'4.5", you're not going to roll out of that chair in shock and surprise.
I think Isaiah Collier was listed at 6'5". He's like maybe 6'1".
Yeah, right.
USC listed him. Give him 4 inches. Give me a break.
Yeah.
So, those are certainly important. And, how you work around. I mean, that's a huge question about Keontae. No question about it.
Yeah.
As good as he has been, he is not huge. Now, he is not 5'11". He's a legit 6'2", 6'3". He's a legitimate size.
But the under 6'6" guy can work in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the reason I just listed a bunch of guys who are under 6'6", and our listening audience quickly identifies with everyone remembers stat lines, remembers key moments in their career, knows how they've done in the playoffs and all that, is because those guys are really good and they've made a mark. But when you get to the part about know what they've done in the playoffs, you instantly know you're not winning championships. And the guy, Steph's the exception, and he's 2 inches short of the bar. And SGA's right at the bar, and he's won one.
And look, Derek White was a point guard. Drew Holiday was a point guard. They're not the best player on their team.
Right, that's what we're getting at.
That's the big part.
And usually not the second best player on their team.
Yeah. Drew Holiday might have been. But yeah, really, you're completely right.
Yeah, but even then you could argue he was third.
Yeah.
The third player they had to have, but he was more Jeff Hornacek than he was Stockton or Malone.
Yeah.
But he's so good, look at the impact he's had in multiple clubs, right? I mean, what does Milwaukee do without him?
Right. So
not win a title.
No, exactly right. So that's something to keep an eye on for the Jazz. Yeah. And I think, looking at what they do last night and how the Jazz play last night, and, it was very competitive against the Thunder. I'll be curious who actually plays tonight against the Dallas Mavericks, second night of a back-to-back. Good excuse to not play Yusuf Nurkic. If you don't want to play Lauri Markkanen, you certainly don't have to, but I haven't seen the injury report come out yet. In fact, it may come out while we're doing this. But, losing 5 straight is positioning the Jazz where they want to be, and I think it gives us a sign of what's going to happen. My question then is, if the Jazz are I don't want to say zigging, but following this pathway, committing to this pathway, losing way more than they're winning. Did we learn enough between October 22nd or 3rd or whenever the season started and December 30th when their beginning loss of this run? Did we learn enough about this team to feel confident that you can make decisions this summer about how to build it?
Yes.
Because I don't think you can tank again next year.
I agree. And that's why the only other thing to do then is to start making moves to build it.
You can tank next year. You can do whatever you want. Jazz on their
It's a bad idea.
You don't need to tank next year.
Right.
I don't know if it's the draft next year.
I don't think the draft is that stocked. I think you're going to be even better. It's going to be even harder to tank to get where you'd get an elite pick. Young guys are going to keep improving. There'll be another draft class will be now full of third-year guys.
And you're too far into Lowry's contract now at this point to be like, there's still runway. You're running out.
In the previous rebuild, Dennis Lindsey said there will come a moment when we need to push our chips to the middle of the table. And when he got to that point, after they had a good run at the end of the year and came up just short, and at the start they had a lot of injuries, and so they dug a big hole. I said in the post-press conference, is now the time? And he gave me crap about that later. He's like, you were sitting 4 feet away from the owner who was taking notes. Gail Miller literally had a legal yellow pad out and was taking down everything he said for follow-up questions against things that they obviously talked about in private meetings versus public versus where are we going, right? And he was kind of like, way to put me on a spot right in front. And I'm like, the answer to the question is we don't always ask questions that we don't know the answer to.
Sure.
I think I know the answer to the question, but people don't want to hear it from me.
Yeah,
they can get that on the radio any morning. They want to hear it from you, right? And the answer is yes. And furthermore, you got in your meetings, you ultimately decided yes, and then you went and got Joe Johnson and some other veterans, and you want to play. You got in the playoffs and you won a series.
Yeah.
It was the right call.
Yep.
And I think that's the point the Jazz are clearly coming to. I think what this is, as far as having enough information, they have enough information to go for it. I think the most important information for Austin Ainge to gather right now is who does he really believe in? Who's the core going forward? Who does he willing to move? And who does he think he has to move? And don't be wrong, because you don't want to be the guy in 5 years saying, how did the Clippers trade SGA?
Yeah, right.
You can't make that deal. It's been so hard to get these guys, and they develop at different paces for different reasons. Hendricks obviously had an injury that set him back a full season, right? And the other guys didn't have to deal with that, although now Kessler is dealing with that. And the smaller guys and the bigger guys, and did you play 4 years in college or one, they're all developing at their own pace. And they develop at whatever rate, that's fine. But don't be impatient and be wrong. We've all gone through too much for you to be wrong and ship out the guy. Not
Absolutely
just the guy, but the second best guy or the third best guy. And who's got the clutch gene? And that's hard to know now. You mentioned White in Boston. I freaking love that guy.
Awesome. Yeah, he's awesome.
He makes so many big winning plays. The rebounds he gets, the balls he saves when they're almost out of bounds or it's on the floor and he can't grab it, but he just gets enough to tip it to a team. I am amazed and constantly impressed at the number of smart, winning, high-energy, high-effort plays that guy makes.
It's funny. He's so the anti-Trae Young.
Yes.
Trae has all these gaudy numbers and can run an offense by himself and, hits a half-court game winner. It's not like Trae is useless.
I know.
We've seen him. But when it comes to winning time, Derek White. I mean, you would draft him 1,000 times out of 1,000 over Trae Young.
He is so impressive. And yet, if you listed a value on the roster and you look at the salaries, you'd probably go, well, it depends because they've had a couple of different rosters here over the last few years. But, I mean, they're winning a championship. He's 4th, 5th, 6th most talented player on the team.
Yeah.
But I absolutely want him out there with the ball in his hands when important stuff's happened in the last 2 minutes.
Well, okay, you brought up an interesting point, and this is the hard part of the job. And we like to just say, like, oh, you did this wrong, you did this right. So if we were to put our own hats on and try and play this game a little bit, I'm just going to spot you. And you don't even have to tell me the names if you don't want to. But I will spot you these 3. Lowry Markkanen, Keontae George, Ace Bailey.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys are still going to be on the team next year. If the Jazz are starting to improve, if the Jazz are going to spend free agency money, they're going to start to build out this roster, how many more guys do you think are a part of that foundation? Those 3 are for sure. And that might be enough. The truth is, Keontae and Lowry alone might be enough. The gamble of what you have in
I would say
Bailey might be enough.
Kessler. I think what we're seeing this year, and the only reason they're as bad as they are this year and they're not even better, I think that a lot of the pressure of that whole do not tank comment versus keep the draft pick, the Jazz caught a huge break when Kessler got injured.
Mm-hmm.
Sucks to have an injury. Sucks for him.
But it
the
made
pain,
the
the
pathway
rehab.
really obvious.
But it made them bad. It gave them an obvious out for losing games that they needed to lose. If he was playing, it'd be a lot trickier to retain the draft pick. It might not even be remotely possible.
No, it might not be.
It is a freeway to the front of the rim right now. It is clearly in every opponent's game plan, attack the rim. Now, the next thing we do after we attack the rim is we attack the rim again. And plan C is to attack the rim. They're relentless, and they should be.
Yeah. I look down the rest of the list of guys that are on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's truly safe to say, like, Isaiah Collier, I don't know.
I agree.
Kyle Filipowski, I don't know.
I think they've drafted a bunch of guys who will be in the league 8 to 10 to 12 years, but they may be in the league with 4, 5, 6, 7 teams.
Cody Williams, I don't know.
I agree. The play he made, and I thought this when he made it, he blocked a shot that they ultimately called it was goaltending. The ball got to the backboard first. But he was at such a disadvantage trailing the play. And I can't even remember who had the ball, but they went to the other side of the rim to use the rim to protect the right, and it didn't matter. He basically put on a cape and flew. And that is what, for all his negatives, you can't teach it, you can't coach it. You can either put the cape on and fly or you can't, and he can. That was a super impressive play.
And the Jazz don't have a lot of guys like that. I mean, when you go back to Taylor Hendricks, who has not been that impressive this year. He's played in 25 games. He's averaging 5.4 points and 3.2 rebounds, and he makes mistakes defensively, and he's in the wrong spot, and he's coming back from a major injury, which you need to give him a lot of leeway to get back before you start critiquing his game. It's like, yeah, his physical tools are so much so that it just might be worth keeping him around, and same with Cody. And
I agree.
You know, Isaiah's got a real skill because he can get downhill and get into the paint and
it's going to keep
these crazy games.
It's going to keep him in the league.
And if he's going to continue to shoot whatever it is, 35% from three, even on one attempt a game is fine.
I don't think you need Collier and Clayton and Keontae George.
I'm curious about that. I'm curious. One of those guys ends up being a third-string point guard. Collier's a pure point guard, while Clayton's probably a point guard.
And all those guys are good enough to be backups. So I think somebody, and it may not even be the Jazz picking. It may be when it's time to make a deal, if another team is sold on Collier and another team is sold on Clayton, you know, they may get to pick. I wonder behind the scenes if the Jazz definitively feel differently about those guys.
I'm curious. I've just thought about it. I've never said it out loud, but I'll say it now. I would be curious if a team that needs a point guard that wants to make the playoffs this year, and I'll just say the Houston Rockets, would they call on Isaiah Collier? And then what would you be able to get back from them? You know, are they going to run into a spot where they know they're not going to have very much money because they've already locked up all these guys, and that's what they're going to be looking at? Could you go get they've got a bunch of good wings, a bunch of good role player wings that probably they just don't have room for on their roster. You know, a guy like Tari Eason or somebody, not to get too lost in the weeds of these players.
I guess tell me how deep you're going down their bench to know if it's 1-for-1 or if the Jazz have to put a draft pick in the deal. To get somebody who's better and a little more established.
Yeah, you might have to give up some second-round picks or something.
Right. How good a player are they getting back? I mean, Collier has a real skill.
He's going to be in the NBA for a while.
And I think that you can game plan for that skill. And this goes back to the comment about smaller players. you don't have as much time to game plan in the regular season. In a playoff series, you can really lock in on what are team strengths, what are their weaknesses, what do we have to take away from them, and where can we absolutely attack? What's a matchup we need to get? And so I think that the smaller players become much more problematic when you're on their team in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. And are you trusting a guy who's never played in the playoffs in his life to come in?
Right. But Austin Ainge said off camera, off microphone, but for the record, like the trades aren't happening. Actually, maybe he did say that. I don't think I said this in a private conversation. I think this is when we were over at Media Day and he put the headset on, that contracts have become more important than talent in trades. And so not only is it what is the talent of Clayton or what is the talent of Collier, it's what is the other team's cap situation. You know, if they could trade someone who's coming up for renewal and get somebody who's still 2 years away from getting that second contract that's going to cost more money, that could be totally worth it to give up more talent just to get yourself a little breathing room with the second apron.
Expiring money, all these options. Flexibility really matters. And then, maybe you get flexibility and a young guy with, some future. I'm curious about that. You could do Isaiah Collier and Kevin Love for Tari Eason, and that gives you some depth pieces and good veteran big guy who's a great locker room guy in Kevin Love. I don't know. A little curious, a little interesting. And if somebody would call, this is purely hypothetical, but I'm curious if somebody would call on that and where the Jazz interest would be if they had to bring a little bit of talent back this year. But cleared room for Walt Clayton because I think the Jazz really like Walt Clayton. He played 17 straight minutes to close the game last night.
Yeah, and played well.
He's good.
Really difficult shots.
He's really
he had
good.
A couple that were very impressive. His overall stat line from three wasn't good. I think it was 2 of 7. But one of the threes he hit was really hard.
Yeah, and a dagger. Look, we talk about Isaiah Collier. I think you're right. Isaiah has a long future in the NBA. I think he's going to be around. He's got a thing. He's got really an identity and a thing, and it works. The NBA will always value what he does, his ability to get downhill. He kind of simplifies the game. But you know what we love about Derek White? We talk about saving the shot or saving the ball out of bounds, yada, 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 all this stuff. You know what he also does? He makes shots.
Oh, yeah.
I remember I was listening to an interview one time with Frank Layden and a guy, radio guy, and Frank asked him, all right, what's the number one most important thing on the basketball court? And the radio guy got a little rattled and was like, getting the defense all to move is one. And Frank Layden said, making baskets. Literally, the goal of the game, the field goal, is to put the ball in the hole.
You know, when PK just, starts, he's bored, so he's just going at me, right? Mm-hmm. He's going at me. Oh, so we just define good and bad games on whether a guy shoots the ball well. I'm like, well, that's what they give you points for.
That's the only way to win.
Yeah, you could do all this other stuff, but all the other stuff is to give you a better chance to make a shot.
You could rebound 90% of the shots. Yeah. You could,
if you can't ever put it in,
50 steals, 50 blocks. But if they beat you 2-0, you still lose. Right. You still got to get the ball in the hole. And Walt Clayton does that and is going to do it at a really high level. So I think there is value to having him. And, will the Jazz clear out room for that? We talked about this a little bit last week. And Will Hardy the next day brought up, we're not trying to pit these guys against each other. He said specifically, like Walt Clayton and Isaiah Collier, we're not trying to make them feel like they're fighting for the same minutes. You can try and make them not feel that way. The truth is, Isaiah Collier recognizes that he hasn't played in 17 straight minutes, and Walt Clayton has. You know, you can try and balance your roster, and maybe Walt Clayton doesn't play at all tonight against Dallas, but he's going to know if he's not playing.
Playing time is one of the few weapons a coach has. He can only yell so often. Mm-hmm.
Will's trying.
And
he's trying to yell.
For people who don't like Will yelling, well, then don't put out that pathetic effort in Portland.
Yeah.
And if he looked cranky the next night in Oklahoma City and had a lot to say about everything and called timeout when it was 9-8 to rip Lowry for being late on help, he didn't even get around immediately, maybe later he did, to ripping the two guys who butchered the pick and roll. Ooh, somebody slipped a pick and we were surprised. Two guys are standing in cement watching it happen. They probably need to be yelled at too.
Yep.
But why is he yelling? I don't know. Did you see the disaster that was the Portland game? Like, if you don't want him yelling, play better.
Yeah, play better.
And so he can take time away from some guys. Like Ace's minutes went way down. He only played 10 minutes in that game.
Yeah. No, he's coming back off the injury.
Okay.
He's unlimited minutes. But, you can play your guys.
There were other guys who didn't play a lot of minutes.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like right now, if you want to play, defend. Because the lack of defense is killing the coach. He's talking about it in nice general terms, but he's talking about in the post-game media, 30th in the league. You could really suck and be 28th.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
They're nowhere near 28th. They're 30th by a wide margin, and they were 30th last year.
Yeah.
And I know they were tanking games on purpose and running out terrible lineups, and I know Kessler's out. There are certainly mitigating circumstances, But 30th is 30th. Could you just get to 28th or 27th?
And I do think that brings us back to, do you feel confident in what you've learned about this team through the first 30 games of the season before they start tanking?
As a group, I do. Individually, I do not. As a group, I feel like they are definitely in a place where they should bring in veterans, try to make moves to win games. There should be no more thought to draft position. There should be no more thought to tanking. There should be no more, can we get to the top 3? They should be trying to win.
You're right, after this year's lottery.
Period. Yes, after the lottery.
Yeah.
After the lottery this year. So going into the summer, what kind of trades they make on draft night, what do they do in free agency, everything which should be with the thought of how do we maximize the number of wins. Period. As a group. Now individually, which guy do they keep? Which guy do they let go? I do feel like I got blinders on, and if it were me making the calls, there'd be a real risk of an SGA moment because I don't have 100% confidence. But they also have way more info than us.
They do.
They're at all the practices. They know how guys are responding watching film and who's watching extra film and whose learning curve is, tracking up. So there are little tells along the way that they should know that should inform them of like who's really going to take steps forward in a year into who's going to have success, make a lot more money on the second contract and still be driven, and who is a little threat to give a C+ effort if we give them money.
You know what's kind of interesting on that is we can see the tells of who they like after the fact.
Yes.
And Keontae, for example, look, Keontae was hard-headed. He was stubborn. Same meaning. He was a pain in a lot of people's butt, I think, for the last couple of years.
He was immature.
He was immature, period. That's what he was. He was immature. And I think at times probably difficult then to have around and know what he was going to buy into and not buy into. And they kept giving him opportunities, and they kept giving him more and more and more. And then in the offseason, they trade Colin Sexton to give Keontae even more. Clearly they saw something there that there is a pathway for him to become a very good player.
I also thought that they had to move Colin Sexton or they weren't going to be able to tank and keep the pick.
I think that's very true.
I think they're looking at him going, man, if that guy's on a roster, here comes 32 wins, and we're giving the pick away.
And you can't only play him 40 games again in a contract year. Same with John Collins. Those guys want to play. So to be fair to them, yes, you have to trade them and give them an opportunity.
But then
you
get the value back, I thought. It slowed down the rebuild. It's one of the reasons people are so – I thought that Danny's, in these 3 years, his ability, Trader Danny, and make these deals, he'll get a guy – I thought when they got Collins, it was brilliant. He was way down. Mm-hmm. The team was frustrated on him. They can get here. He can do better, get his numbers up, and they can flip him for more. I never thought he was a long-term piece here. I didn't think he was the right age. I didn't think he fit in. I thought even if they made him better, he'd probably still be overpaid. It never occurred to me he would turn into 40, 50, 85 guy.
No, of course not.
Man. But they got I thought they'd get pieces back, and they just really haven't.
Yeah, they really haven't. And
they haven't added a core. I think it's one of the reasons that we're in. And Ainge's other rebuilds are out of the playoffs 1 and 2 years. He don't want to be out of the playoffs. Mm-hmm. He wants to make moves and get back, but he hasn't made them. And I think it goes back to what Austin said about contracts are more important than talent.
I do think this offseason the Jazz are going to add talent. I think they're obviously going to have to look defense first. I think you go and you find the best defensive players, and I say this a lot. We sometimes try to think that defense is like this undefinable thing because the stats don't measure it particularly well, but it's like, you know who good defenders are. And if you bring them onto your team, guess what's going to happen? Your team's going to play better defense. It's just like getting good offensive players. If you have a bad offensive team, get good offensive players. You're going to have a good offense. Defense is the exact same way.
If they could add one athlete who was tall, long arm, 6'7" to 6'9", who wanted to defend and was good at it, and they put Kessler at the rim, it would make a big difference.
A huge difference.
It'll be interesting to see when we get deeper in the season, and I haven't added up the numbers. Maybe you can count them up real quick. I think they've given up 130 points in regulation 11 or 12 times now. And they're a disaster when that happens. When they hold teams under 130, they're basically a 500 team.
Yeah. Let's see here. I can pull this up quickly.
And you don't there's like a 150, 147 double overtime game, but they were under 130 in regulation. And they won that game eventually.
6,
so you can't
7,
count that.
9, 10, 11. I think it's 12.
Okay. And how many have they won?
Basically none of them.
Yeah. There might be one in there. There might be like one game that they won 138, 135 or something like that. I can't remember.
131, 129.
Okay.
They didn't give up 130. No.
Okay.
They haven't won a game in regulation that they've given up over 100.
So they're 0-12.
And
they're 12 and 24. So they're already a 500 team. And like 130, give them 130 points in a
30.
game is not a good night at the office.
No, it's an easy number to beat.
But they score so well.
They do. They really have a very good offense. Yes, you look at some of these games, Indiana, they scored 152 points. Like, Will does have this team playing extraordinarily well offensively. So you go out and you get some defensive guys who don't sink your offense entirely, and the wins will come. The wins will come pretty quickly. I'm not convinced that if the Jazz don't end up with a top 3 pick, and look, I have not watched these guys outside of a little bit of Cam Boozer because Duke's always on TV, and A.J. DeBonsa because he's 40 miles away from us. I haven't seen Darren Peterson a whole lot because he hasn't played a whole lot.
Right. He's played the last 2 games, and he's starting to score it. But for a guy who you got to let him play consistently. So I don't even want to judge him on what I see now. I'd rather judge him in a month.
Sure.
He's not very well scouted because, again, they don't have much film on him.
But if the Jazz don't end up with a top 3 pick, if they don't win the lottery and move up, even if you go up to 4,
now we're getting
trade
a real
that pick. Like you bring in a really
what do you get back?
You trade a 4 through 8th pick. If it's below that, it obviously goes to Oklahoma City, and if it's top 3, you're not trading it. 4 through 8 gets you a really, really good player.
Okay, but at this point last year, I don't think VJ Edgecombe and Con Knippel were tracking as players 4 and 5, in the draft. And right now, it looks like, well, actually, they weren't even 5 because Ace Bailey was 5.
Yeah.
What did they end up going? They ended up going 3-4?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they went 3-4. But I don't think they were tracking as top 5 players. So maybe the Jazz draft, let's say they move up and draft 4th.
Sure.
Because or maybe they end up with the 5th worst record, and that would be odd if they drafted 5th with the 5th worst record, but it could happen. Yeah. But there could be a player in that 4, 5, 6 range that could really help them. They could be high on, and they might not even know now. We're just starting the conference season.
Yeah.
I mean, Edgecombe, it feels like to me in retrospect, in December I heard nothing about him. As we went through January, I started thinking, that guy's climbing with good reason. And by February, it felt like every Big 12 fan, Uten Cougars, any Uten Cougar was a Jazz fan, was like, Edgecombe.
Yeah.
Edgecombe's the guy in February.
Yeah.
And by the time we got to March, it's like, stop talking about it. He's not going to be on the board.
Yeah, right.
They got to move way up if they're going to get that guy. And then once the draft lottery happened, there was no chance.
Yeah.
So reputations change really quick. Guys can move up and down really fast.
Absolutely.
Right now.
Right. Absolutely. We don't know. Again, at this point last year, Ace Bailey was the number 2 overall pick.
Yeah.
And he falls to 5. So I don't think that's going to happen with an A.J. DeBonsa or a Cam Boozer or a Darren Peterson, but you truly never know.
Don't you feel like you fell to 5 on false pretenses, though?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But look, guys screw things up. Agents screw things up.
Yeah.
Guys have bad workouts and fall. It does happen. So, yeah, you can't guarantee that, certainly. But I do think if you fall into that 5, 6, 7 spot, barring you wait until to see what happens on draft night, and you explore if there's any chance you could move up. I don't think so, but you explore. I wouldn't be surprised to see if the Jazz say, hey, we don't want to add another gamble that's a 50-50 at 6, 7, or 8. I mean, that's a 50-50 player that they're going to become a good player, much less anything at all.
If they can get a veteran who they like, a younger veteran. I am always curious. These rebuilds, you usually have to find somebody who, for one reason or another, is buried on somebody else's roster who has huge upside. And the Jazz have done it over time. They found those guys underappreciated somewhere else, and then they come here. I think Raja Bell might be one of the all-time finds. Mm-hmm. We'll see.
All right, Jazz taking on Dallas Mavericks tonight, big game. And then Charlotte on Saturday is probably the biggest game. That's another team that's right there with the Jazz.
2-game swing in the old lottery standings.
You find a way to lose one of these, you're probably in good shape. You lose both of them. Jazz fans are really going to be licking their lips looking at the lottery.
That next road trip is brutal.
Yeah.
I think the 5-game road trip, I would predict right now 1-4.
I think I talked to you a little bit. I talked to some people at the Jazz, and they were saying this honestly. They weren't saying, "Oh, we're going to start tanking in January." Nobody's ever said that to me. I promise you. But they just said, "Look, the schedule in January gets really tough."
But the schedule in December got really tough, and they had a 500 stretch.
They did.
They went like 6-6 for 12 games, and I would have absolutely taken the under on that.
Yeah,
I would have.
Nobody thought they were going to win at Detroit or at San Antonio.
Yeah, if someone had said 4.5 wins in the month of December, I'd have taken the under.
By the way, if the Jazz had lost to both San Antonio and Detroit, they'd be tied with the Wizards for the 4th worst record in the NBA. It's not that far off. A couple of crazy wins. They almost won last night, though. So they're clearly not that bad because they are almost winning some of these games.
Some of those teams that were terrible have now flown past them. Like the Clippers, as long as Kawhi stays healthy, the Clippers are going to disappear over the horizon.
I still think there's a chance that the Pelicans overtake them. Because there's not that many wins separated. And the Pelicans have no reason to give up the second worst overall pick.
Yeah.
They have no reason to.
But we don't know what trade could make a team stronger or weaker. We still have that. There are still major injuries in the NBA. There always are at this time. can't predict who they're going to happen to, which players, which teams. Lots of stuff could still shake it up.
You're right. Dallas, Charlotte this week. 5-game road trip at Cleveland, at Chicago, at Dallas, at San Antonio. And then it gets difficult when you get home. Minnesota, San Antonio, Miami.
I think the 2 Dallas games together are a chance to win a game. They're not that good. And when you play a team twice in 3 days, you usually split.
And 3 times in 10 days. Jazz play Dallas 3 times in 10 days. They're going to win at least one of those games.
Right. Yes. And they might win, like Cleveland has been going really poorly.
Chicago's a joke.
Yeah.
You could win at Chicago. So
should I predict 2 and 3 on the road trip?
Well, over the next 7. Dallas, Charlotte at home, at Cleveland, at Chicago, at Dallas.
I had 2 and 5 in the next 7.
Yeah. 3 and 4 is possible, probably 2 and 5. I think they'd be happy with 2 and 5.
They're a bad road team.
All right, DJ, thanks for jumping on. Chandler
Anytime.
and I will be back with you on Monday. No podcast next Thursday.
Okay.
But we will figure out something otherwise. Thanks for listening, as always. You can read us at KSLSports.com. Catch both David and I on 97.5, 1280, the KSL Sports Zone. We'll be back with you on Monday.